I'm, oh, yes, the meeting's now being recorded. My name is Lucinda and I am a local. I've lived in Hurstbridge for about 20, going on 25 years. Well, I think I'm a local. I don't know if I'm local for people here, but, um, and I love living here in this area. I spend half my time doing training and presentations in this kind of topic, that anything to do with being comfortable and energy efficient at home. Actually, also other things. I'm really into permaculture and circular economy and um, anything to do with sustainable living, really. The other part of my time, I'm an accredited residential efficiency scorecard assessor, which is a very long name for basically that I go into people's homes and help them work out how to make their homes more comfortable and efficient. There's a bunch of us across Australia, and yeah, it's a job I love as well as this training because I feel like I'm able to help people make a bit of a difference. I would like to start by acknowledging the beautiful country that we're on, the land of the Wurundjeri that's unceded, and pay my respects and give my gratitude, my eternal gratitude to elders past and present. I just appreciate all of the knowledge that has been passed down through generation after generation to people to help keep this land such a beautiful place. And I guess with the work that I do, I hope that I can help bring people a little bit more in balance with what we're demanding from the world around us and live a little bit more lightly on the earth. Um, so this presentation is part of a whole series. It's actually part of two sort of series. One is the Power Up Nillumbik series, which is about 3 months worth of electrification events. It's also that is part of a larger 3-year series called Rethink Nillumbik. And the reason for these is that council they declared a climate emergency. Actually, I might hand over to Grace for this. Please welcome Grace. She's new to the Nillumbik sustainability team and we'll just talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Lucinda. I'm Grace. I'm the new Environment and Climate Change Officer at Nillumbik. If you come along to any of the other Rethink Nillumbik workshops later in the year, you'll probably see my face. Nice to meet you guys. As Lucinda was saying, in 2022, we declared a climate emergency, and as part of that, we developed a 10-year strategy. And as part of that, we have 3 key goals. And one of those goals is community mitigation and adaptation, which are just fancy terms for saying council is going to support our community to help them reduce their climate change impacts and also teach them how to be more adaptive and resilient to all the things caused by climate change. For example, a 30-degree day in April. And the ultimate goal is to help our community get to net zero emissions by 2035. We really just want to create a more sustainable and livable Nillumbik. And yeah, that's why, we got Going Green Solutions, so Lucinda and Jules, help deliver these workshops so that we can, bring everyone along and upskill everybody. So if you like this workshop, there are more events that you can register for, and I'll send the link shortly in the chat, and I think it's going to be in the email after the workshop as well that Lucinda will send out. Look forward to that.
Great. Thanks, Grace. All right. Let me start talking about Windows, which is, of course, why you're all here. We're going to talk about, first of all, some general understanding of comfort and what makes people comfortable and what we're actually talking about in terms of a comfortable and efficient home. We'll then look at different aspects of windows, starting with window treatments, then window glazing, window shading, how to actively use your windows for best comfort and efficiency, and then a few more resources on what to do next. So first, for the overview, this I find is really important, and I try and incorporate it into all of my workshops because I believe that if you understand the the ways that heat moves, then you can apply it to all different situations, and you don't need somebody to tell you, what you can do. So hopefully this will help. Human comfort is an interesting thing. There's a whole bunch of things that impact our comfort that we're not necessarily aware of. The one we are always aware of is air temperature. And if you said, what makes me warm, a lot of people would say, when the air's warm. And they don't think about other things. But there's other things that do impact. So things like air movement. With relation to windows, this could be because the window's open and it's letting in a beautiful breeze, or there's a draft or a convection current where there's cold air is running off a cold window and moving over us, which feels cold. There's also exposure to radiant heat, which we'll get warm from, or exposure to a cool object where we actually radiate heat to that cool object. I'll talk a little bit more about that movement of heat in a minute. Oh, humidity is the other one, which windows affect all of these things except for humidity, really. So thermal energy is, heat energy is thermal energy. They're the same name for one thing. And the absolute key thing to know about thermal energy is that heat always moves from where it is warmer to where it's cooler. This comes into play in a variety of ways. In a typical movement of heat situation, you would have either radiation or conduction or convection, but in all cases, the heat is moving from where it's more warm to where it's less warm. If we look at that in relation to our homes, you would have the sun shining on our building shell, for example, or in the windows, and that heat is warming up the building shell or coming inside and warming up in our home. If that heat is landing on, say, your brickwork, then it will heat up that brickwork, which will in turn heat up whatever materials are next to that, and the heat is conducted through those. So conduction is when heat travels through two materials that are in contact. And then once that heat is through the other side, for example, if we're talking about a window frame, the heat will conduct it through an aluminium frame. It reaches the other side. That aluminium frame is warm. That means the air just next to the aluminium frame gets warm. Then you get air coming through your room, picking up that warm air and moving it around. And that will also move around within your home until the heat is evenly distributed through the house. So during this session, I'll try and mention the various times when these things are happening. And what we want to do with our window improvements is manage all of these three forms of heat movement. The better we can manage it, the less we will be negatively impacted. These charts show how much heat is either gained or lost through windows in an uninsulated home. But by referring to insulation, it means anything that reduces heat flow. So that includes window coverings, glazing, that sort of thing. And you can see it's a fair bit. And a single pane of glass can actually lose almost 10 times the amount of heat as the same area of insulated wall. Even when it's a double-paned piece of glass, it's still weaker than an insulated wall in terms of thermal protection. That's why it's so important to spend a little bit of time focusing on what we can do with our windows. So what we want to do is improve the way that our windows can protect us from radiation, conduction, and convection. Or in the case of radiation, we might want to allow that radiation inside. Anyway, let's start with window treatments. I think this is the best place to begin, and you could also call them internal coverings. This is curtains, blinds, anything that we put inside the windows. What we want to do with those, or anything that you choose, no matter what it is, your aim should be to reduce airflow across the glass, because this reduces the convection of heat which has come through the glass and the frame and into our room. To do this, the best window coverings will just seal off the space pretty much. If you look at the picture on the left, it's a heavy drape. It goes a little bit to the side of the window. Ideally, you want it to go, half a 20 centimeters or so each side of the window. You need it to go down to the ground, go above the top of the window, and ideally have some sort of pelmet on it. That then provides an enclosed space. The picture in the middle is an alternative called honeycomb blinds, or also called cellular blinds, that are becoming quite well known now. And in this situation, the person has installed a honeycomb blind right inside the window rebate, and they've installed it quite snugly. You can see a little strip of light, but not too much. And then they've put another one outside. And those together, if you had them down, would very significantly reduce any heat, any air moving across the glass. The picture on the right-hand side is of what we call an invisible pelmet. There's actually one of those on top of the curtain at the left-hand side, but you can't see it because it's invisible. And what that is, it's a strip of anything really. It could be clear acrylic or core flute or even cardboard, cut in a strip and attached to the frame, the metal frame that curtain is hanging from. And what it does is it blocks the air so that it's not moving up and down across the window glass. If you don't have a pelmet, then say this is your window, this is your curtain. In summer, heat's going to come through the window and just travel up and into the room. And in winter, it'll be the same, but the opposite way. You'll have all your nice warm air over this side. It sits around here at the top of the curtain, touches the cold glass, and then heads down, so you're cooling your room. That's an example of that convection current of air that can feel cold. There's another couple of ways you can get a good thermal effect with treatments. One is Roman blinds. They're the ones on the left that fold down in in sort of chunks. They're best if they're lined and fairly heavy duty. And one of the reasons they're good is generally they have a pelmet that's built into the top of them. Another option is a curtain that's attached to a ceiling track. And in this case, this is the picture on the right. In this case, the ceiling actually ends up being the pelmet. And there's no way air can travel up and down there because it's completely enclosed. So that's a really good option for some areas. This chart is just to show you give you a more tangible idea of what these things do. It's taken from Sustainability Victoria, and it's about the loss of heat through windows depending on what sort of treatments or coverings are over them. If you look first at the stars, you've got an unlined curtain or a Holland blind with no pelmet. That's the red star. So it's a bit of a reduction in heat transfer from having a bare window. But if you add a pelmet to that, you go to the blue star, which is another, I'd say, double the performance. And the other thing I want to point out is the red arrow shows a standard double glazed window without any window covering at all. And the blue arrow shows a single glazed window with a heavy lined curtain and a pelmet. So it's actually more thermally protective to have a single glazed window with a really good covering than it is to have a double glazed window with no covering. And that's often really surprising to people, but it's sort of nice in a way because it's a lot more affordable to go for a really good window treatment. Window glazing. Now, before I talk about the different things you can do to your windows, I've got a little bit of a technical section to go through. It's quite possible that this is above and beyond what you want to know about windows, and don't worry, you can just vague out and I'll come back at the end and I'll still talk through all of the options of what you can do with your glazing. But this is just for people who want to know a little bit more about these terms. There's a lot of terms that get thrown around, and it's useful to know what they are. So we do have a Windows energy rating scheme, and it allows window units to be given a star rating. When I talk about a window unit, I mean the whole thing, because a window is usually installed as a product. It's got a frame and the mechanics and the glass and everything. It's put in as one thing. So that's what the window energy rating scheme will give a rating for. And there's 5 stars goes to heating and 5 stars goes to cooling. And those star ratings indicate the effect the window has on the energy performance of the whole house. So they go from, for example, a 1-star window would be a single pane tinted aluminium framed window, which is very poor thermal protection, to the highest rating would be for a double pane low E argon fill window with a wooden frame, which is really good. So if you were going to be buying new windows, this is something that you could have a look at. Some of these things are more relevant if you're going to be buying new windows, which generally I'm talking more about upgrades with people. So, but yeah, this gives you a bit of an indication of both options. This is an example of a WERS rating label, and you can see that it has the heating in this example is 3. Why is that only 3 out of 4? Going to have to investigate why there's only 4 stars there instead of 5. Anyway, the heat rating is actually how good those windows will be at keeping warmth in, and the cooling one is how good they'll be at keeping warmth out. There's also on that label a U value and a solar heat gain coefficient value, which are separate things that I'll talk about in a moment. So U value, if you've ever talked about insulation, as in ceiling insulation or walls or underfloor, you've probably heard people talking about an R value, and that's the resistance of that insulation to heat transfer. And in the case of ceiling, walls and underfloor, we're looking for a high R value because the higher it is, the better the resistance. The U value is something similar, but it's expressed in the opposite way. So when it comes to a window, you want a low U value. And it's showing how readily a window system conducts heat. So we want one that doesn't, basically. The lower the U value, the more insulative the window system will be. And like with the WERS rating, it includes all aspects of the window. If you want to learn more complicated stuff about windows, look up Efficiency Matrix, the company, and they have lots of really good YouTube videos that are very complex, and if you really want to learn, go for it. They're really good, but they are very complex. Just as an example, a single glazed, well, this is sort of the equivalent of the 1-star rating on the WERS rating. The single glazed aluminium frame window has a U value of 6.7, whereas the number D, the double glazed argon filled low E timber framed window, has a U value of 2. These are sort of averages. So in this case, it means that A allows more than 3 times the amount of heat to pass through the window than D. And this is why people talk about improving their windows, because it really does make a difference to the amount of heat you can keep in your home in winter or keep out of it in summer. Then there's another aspect, which is called the solar heat gain coefficient, or SHGC. This one is measured between 0 and 1, and it's about how readily solar radiation can be admitted through a window. The lower the solar heat gain coefficient, the less heat passes through. Now, I've got a question at the bottom there. Do we always want a low solar heat gain coefficient? If this was a workshop, I'd be curious to hear your responses. But basically, it's a movable thing because it all depends where you are and what orientation the window is. It's not something that you would say every house should have windows with a low SHGC, because you will want to gain solar heat in winter in a cold place, but you will not want to gain solar heat in summer in a hot place, or maybe even in summer in a cold place. So this is why I said this bit is a bit technical, and it does get quite complicated because it's not one size fits all, and it really mainly relates to new windows. Low E coatings is something most people will have heard of because they're becoming more known. There's a whole range of coatings that you can buy at hardware stores, some of which are low E, but it's a little bit like solar heat gain coefficient. It's a bit tricky. So it can be a really excellent way to improve windows, but it could also backfire on you if you are not choosing the right thing for the right scenario. So a few things about low E coatings. They can be hard coat or external to the glass. And if you had existing windows and you were getting a low E coating put on them, it would be a hard coat. Or if you're getting new windows built, say double glazed windows with a low E coating, that would be a soft coat, and it would be inside the two panes. That will keep it safe because soft coat will scratch very easily. But the other thing is it can be either high transmission or low transmission. So the high transmission will allow daylight through and give you good solar gain, so it allows the solar heat gain through. But once that heat is inside, it reduces the amount of the long wave infrared heat that can go back out through the window. So say this is inside, you've got a heater on. It allows heat through from the sun, but then that heat sort of moves around here, and most of the time it would bounce back to the window and go straight through the window, whereas a low E glass will reflect it back so that it stays inside the house. This one is not a bad option for cold climates, but then there's a low transmission one, which reduces the solar heat coming through, which would be great for a hot place. Oh, well, I've put this is a good option for hot climates, but it wouldn't necessarily, it would also have to let that heat back out. So the placement of low E coatings usually is a piece-by-piece choice. There's a company I'll mention in a moment that does retrofitting of double glazing, and one of the options they offer is a low E coating. And when I talked to her, I said, is that something you'd just get low E coating everywhere? And she said, no, absolutely not. You might put it on, you might put it on the south-facing windows, but not the west-facing windows. You really have to know what each window and each room is doing, what's going on there, whether there's shading, and do it on a piecemeal basis. So I think there's one more thing I wanted to talk about in this tech section, then we're going to get on to more practical things that you can do. Lots of people ask about tinting, and this falls into that same low E coating category because in the hardware store, these things are all sort of mixed up. Tinting is generally sold to reduce summer heat, and it does a really good job of doing that. But what most people don't realize is that by reducing summer heat, you're also reducing your winter heat. And we're in a cold climate. We heat for maybe more than half of the year. So we want as much winter heat, sunlight, to come through our houses as we can. We don't want to have tinted film on our windows because it's going to harm us more than it's going to benefit us. It might be suitable in much hotter climates. So that's why when you talk to an assessor about tinting and coatings, it's it's not it's not a simple conversation to have as to say, yes, you should get coatings on all of your windows. It's a lot more complicated than that. But I would definitely avoid tinting. Low E may be okay, but only in the right place. All right, now let's just talk about some more practical ways to upgrade windows. What we're trying to do with glazing, remember with the treatments, the aim was to stop air moving across the glass and create a still airspace. With glazing, you're trying to do a similar thing. You're trying to add an air gap between two panels, one of which is going to probably be your original glass, and the other one could be glass, but it also could be plastic or clear acrylic or a range of things. The most important thing is the air gap. It's not what the material is on either side of that. So frames do play a part in this, and I'll mention them at the end. But at the moment, we're just going to talk about the actual glazing or the glass. Oh, before I move on though, I want to make it really clear that double glazing or secondary glazing, any kind of glazing upgrade, won't reduce summer heat gain when there's direct sun coming in a window. I've seen quite a few houses that only have double glazing on the west windows, which actually doesn't make any sense because double glazing won't stop the westerly afternoon sun. So just keep that in mind. It reduces the transfer of ambient heat from inside to out. So that just means if there's no direct sun, but it's hot outside and it's cooler inside, double glazing or secondary glazing will just reduce the movement of that heat from one place to another. Starting right at the start, there's a range of kinds of secondary glazing. Now, what this term means is that you leave the original window and the glass completely as it is, and you add a second panel on top of it. That's what secondary glazing is, as opposed to double glazing. The cheapest option is bubble wrap, and that's an excellent idea for renters or people on low incomes. It's not the most beautiful look, but on the other hand, it's not the worst look either. And we often have windows that where the curtains, in the middle of winter, where the curtains are rarely opened. So in that sort of scenario, it's actually quite perfect. You just spray a bit of water onto the window first and then stick that bubble wrap over. And what it's doing is so you've got your original window and you've got plastic on the bubble wrap, and within the plastic is little cells of air, and the air is what's insulative. The next one down is a temporary film option called Clear Comfort. And if you're wondering what that guy's doing with the hairdryer, the way that it works is you buy a pack. It's about $230, I think, for enough for 10 windows. You get double-sided tape with it. You clean off your window frame, put the double-sided tape on, stick on this plasticky film. It's a little bit like cellophane or cling wrap, that sort of thickness. And it can be quite messy. It's hard to get it on there without any wrinkles. But then you get a hairdryer and you run it over the plastic and it shrinks tight like a drum. So even if there were wrinkles in it to begin with, it ends up being a completely clear surface, and you could tap on it and get a little drumming sound. This is doing the exact same thing as other kinds of secondary glazing in that it's introducing an air gap between the glass and this thin piece of plastic. And like I said, it's the air that gives you the benefit. So this is a really good option. And for example, if you've moved into a house and you need something nice and cheap to start you off, or in rooms where people aren't there so much, just whack on some Clear Comfort. It will make a really big difference. And you might decide to, save up and do something more long-term later, but this stuff can last for quite a long time. Just so you know, the Clear Comfort website also offers a temporary tape, which is for if you're renting. It's the temporary tape, I believe, just loses its adhesive in about 6 to 12 months. So it means that there's no damage to paint or anything when you go. With the regular tape, it is very sticky, so it can pull off some paint if you had to pull it off. Then another low-cost option was this one is the whole article you can read on the renew.org.au website. And it was written by a woman that moved into a rental, that she wanted to improve the windows, but she couldn't do anything, of course, because it wasn't her house. So she bought a whole lot of fly screen edgings and a clear plastic tablecloth and laid them out on her tables. You can see her work there. And she stuck the clear plastic into the edges, cut it to the right size, and then the picture over on your right-hand side, which shows the windows, that has those panels placed into the window rebate. You can see that, you can probably see it's a removable panel, but I think it looks pretty good. It's quite clear, and it's a very neat option. I also love that she's paired it with putting in honeycomb blinds. You might see them at the top. And with those two things, the removable panel and the honeycomb blind, you would get a really good thermal improvement of windows. I should also say that you can make these type of removable panels with the Clear Comfort film. And in fact, if you have aluminium framed windows, Clear Comfort suggests that you do this, because if you put just the Clear Comfort around the aluminium frame windows on their own, you'll still get all that heat transfer through the aluminium, even though you've stopped it on the glass. So by making a removable panel, you're actually creating an air gap between the aluminium frame and this panel, which means you've got double benefit. And I do want to share exciting news. I'm excited anyway, that we've set a time to run a DIY session at Edendale Farm on Saturday, July the 19th from 2:30, where we'll actually be showing you how to put on Clear Comfort on a window or in a frame and make these removable frames and put them in. So this is just a complete hands-on session where me and a colleague will be showing you all of the tools you need, and we'll go through it bit by bit and show you how it's done. So I'm really looking forward to that. I love nothing beats showing something, right there. Okay, we're still on secondary glazing. You can see how many options there are. And this one is a little bit more permanent. So it's when cutting clear acrylic to size and either putting it on yourself if you have handy person skills. Usually you cut it to size and attach it with wooden beading. And then you see all the paper that's on that clear acrylic on the right-hand side. That just all peels off. That's to stop it getting scratched. On the left, you'll see a more professional version of that called EcoGlaze. So with EcoGlaze, you can either get it installed professionally for you, or you can measure up all your windows, send them all the measurements, and they send you all of those edge bits you see, the white bits and magnetic tape. With EcoGlaze, you use magnetic tape around the window frame instead of double-sided tape, then magnetic tape on the clear acrylic, and those two things go together. So again, you've created a nice air gap. Then there's more professional secondary glazing companies, Magnetite and Stop Noise. They're quite similar to EcoGlaze. Then you have the option of replacing a window or a glass door with well, I say second hand, but often these things are over-ordered for building sites. So if you keep an eye on online marketplaces, you may well find a double glazed window, hopefully with a good frame like timber or UPVC, that you can buy for a fraction of the cost of what it would be new. And this is a good idea if you don't mind if it doesn't match the other windows of the house. So it's not going to suit everyone, But say you're thinking of putting in a French door somewhere and knocking out a bit of your wall, perhaps that's a good option because whatever you put there probably won't match anyway. Then next one up, so this is all from lowest cost to highest cost, is retrofitting double glazing into your existing timber frames. It's only possible with timber frames, not aluminium frames. And there's a company called Thermawood in Melbourne that do this. They have like a show space too. You can go and have a look at it and see or get it explained to you. It's a really good option for heritage windows because they say if you've got an older house with all the sash windows and stuff, they'll actually remove the window, have the glass unit manufactured. They'll also replace any of the pulleys, the weights, the catches, any mechanical bits that need replacing, and they draft seal the window as they put it all back together. So it's quite a big carpentry job because they're pretty much dismantling and putting it back together. It's usually lower cost though than completely replacing the frames and glass. And you get the exact look that you had before with the good timber frames. So that's a good option if you can afford it. And then the most expensive option, which is generally the only one people really know about, is pulling out your windows, as in frames and glass, and putting in new ones. And if you do that, I just want to point out the importance of having a good frame because you'll see on this chart that, the top green arrow shows a single glazed timber framed window, and the one below it is a double glazed aluminium framed window. It does have a small improvement, as in reduction of winter heat loss, but it's not that significant. So if you already have timber framed windows, you may be better off doing something else. One of the other upgrades. All right, window shading. What we want is for our shading, moved on too quickly. We want our shading to help us in summer, but not harm us in winter, is probably the best way to put it. And I'll come back to that. So we can't, if we've got an existing house, there's really not that much you can do about the orientation because it is what it is. But knowing what the orientation is definitely worthwhile because there may be things you can do to mitigate anything about that might be negatively impacting you. For example, there was a house I went to at one point that was having a lot of trouble with condensation and mold, and it actually had one long north-facing wall, but there was a whole extremely high hedge of plants right along the north face of that block, and there was no sun whatsoever coming into the house. So for them, it could have been as easy as either cutting down or trimming those to allow winter heat to come in. It would have given them free winter sunlight, but also just, reduced all those issues of cold. So it's useful to know what's going on in terms of the sun and how it is coming in and out of the house. Using external shading to block radiant heat gain is absolutely critical. You can put really good internal coverings on and that will help, but nothing will do as good as a job as actually stopping that sunlight from hitting the glass in the first place. And what you want is some sort of shading that will block it in summer but will allow it in winter, which is why if you're having trouble with summer heat, rather than putting on a tinting that's there all year round, we'd always suggest external shading, which you have in summer and then you either put back or the leaves fall off if it's a deciduous vine in winter and let all that sunlight through. So you've got to make sure it's a bit of both. What we tend to do, and I see all the time, is build really long north-facing verandas to give us respite from summer heat, but they're permanent, which means we've then blocked all of the winter heat as well, which is a shame. Shading can be any physical material. As I said, ideally adjustable. But it's a physical block. So really, even if you do, I have a not sure if I have a picture of. I don't think I do, but I've seen pictures where people have got a white sheet and used bulldog clips and hung it up off their gutter outside the bedroom window um, in a heat wave. That's a great option for a renter. It's temporary, it's cheap, and it does the job. So don't worry too much about what it is. If there's a heat wave coming, just put up something. This is another option that's a good temporary option called Renshade foil, and it's a perforated aluminium foil that you can cut to size to put into windows, and it reflects a whole lot of the heat away. So it's something you'd put up in summer if there's going to be a heat wave. It's a bit like bubble wrap. It's not the nicest look. It's not the most terrible look either. And if it's reflecting a whole lot of heat away, you might really benefit from it. This is the sort of thing you could do, if you've got a two-story house and the upstairs bedrooms have west-facing windows and they just absolutely bake in the summer sun, this would be a good option to do and put them up for those couple of really hot months, or even just put them up by the day if you think it's going to be hot. You put them up with Velcro sticky dots. And there's also a way you can make basically removable panels, just like the ones we saw for the windows, but to put under a porch that has laser light. Because if you've got one of those, you might be familiar with how, it sometimes feels like you're in an oven because of all that sunlight coming through the laser light. So that's a good option for that as well. It's more a dream than anything. You may have heard of Velux skylights, and lots of people have them. This product, this external shade for a Velux, is actually not available in Australia. And I've been in contact with them saying, when are you going to get this product in? Because it's available in the UK, but not in Australia, whereas I would have thought we needed a lot more than they did. So I just talked to them and said, look, even if they can't get it here, could they order it from, the UK, and would it fit? She said it might, depending on the window. So all hope is not lost, and I'd like to think they might bring something like that in. Skylights are a really big source of heat gain in summer, so having something to shade them externally is a great idea. Failing being able to get something like this, something like Renshade foil would be a good option as well. We talked a bit about this, just the importance of allowing radiant heat inside. I don't really want to talk much about thermal mass, except to say that when it comes into its own, thermal mass is when you've got bricks or concrete or something, and if you put it in the right spot, you'll have it so that the winter sun shines onto it and heats up your inside and gives you nice free heat. But you really need to make sure it's blocked in summer. And the other thing is, in winter, you want to make sure the sun can reach it, because if you've just got thermal mass inside and no sunshine reaching it, it's actually going to give you a negative effect in the house, because it's going to be absorbing the warmth from you and your heater into the walls. So remember, warmth always goes from where it's warmer to where it's less warm, and that thermal mass will be less warm. Okay, just a few more things. There's using windows and doors for natural ventilation. Most of us would do this, I imagine. The breeze in Melbourne is usually from the south, and something strange that I learned years ago is that the best effect is if you have a small opening, a small window open to the south and a large one to the north. The reason is because it creates a suction effect where there's less air coming in than wants to go out, so it sort of pulls it through, and it's a bit hard to get your head around, but that's the best effect if you can create something like that. It could be a small window at the south and then a door on the north. If you've got a two-story home, then stack ventilation can be really useful. That's where you have an opening skylight or window above, say in a two-story home, the ideal spot would be above a stairwell, and that just pulls all of the heat from after a hot day out through that skylight. There's lots of ways you can use your windows effectively, even if you are not changing anything about them. And a lot of these are would have been just normal practice in days past when people didn't have the luxury of, so many heating and cooling devices to turn on. You want to be thinking ahead. If it's going to be hot, pulling down your external shading before you leave the house. Don't wait till it's hot and then pull it down. Pull it down before it's even started. That's to stop the radiant heat coming through. Closing windows and curtains early as well. I know when we were kids, we'd just have to sort of black out the whole house before a heat wave, and it would be quite dark, but it would stay a lot cooler. And then after the hot day, opening everything up to purge the heat. In winter, you want to close everything up at night. Even though you're not up, all of that residual heat from the house will be lost out through the windows if you don't have the curtains closed, and then open them up to allow the passive solar gain. All right, where to from here? Have a bit of a sort of a stock take of your windows. Work out what windows you have in each area of your home, how you use those rooms. Do you need light? Are you likely to close them? I guess what I'm getting at is, say the window that's above a sink. Most people never close the blind if there's a blind there. Some people do, but often there isn't even a blind. That kind of window, or windows in your main living space, you might say, look, we love to look out, see the trees, and we really don't close the windows that much. So in that case, you might decide to do glazing upgrades. In bedrooms, however, you might say, well, we're not really in there in the day, and when we're in there, the curtains are closed. So don't worry about the glazing upgrades, just do really good window treatments. Ideally, of course, you'd do everything perfectly and have great glazing and great window treatments and great shading, but most of us have to sort of mix and match a bit, and that's totally fine to do. You don't need to do the same upgrade for every window in your home. Another option is to think about the rooms or the areas of your home you use the most and just focus all your money and effort on them. Maybe the main living space. Make those windows really thermally protective. Don't worry about the bedrooms for the time being. You can get onto them later if you need to. You can certainly try lower cost upgrades first just to see what the difference is. You might be surprised. You might decide that they're so good you don't need to do anything else. Or you might decide that you're really going to get a really nice look and get beautifully made double glazed windows. There's a few general resources that I'd like to point out. Nillumbik has a Go Electric plan. This is for electrification in general. So part of what Power Up Nillumbik is about is helping people to make their homes more comfortable, but also support them to go all electric and disconnect all of their gas appliances. And a lot of the workshops that we're doing are around that area. This Go Electric plan can help you by outlining what the options are and what you might like to move to. But we've also got, for example, an electrification masterclass coming up where we're going to spend 2 whole hours looking at everything to do with electrification, and there'll be an electrician there who specialises in electrification, which means that he understands all of the way that all of those upgrades fit together, and you can ask questions of him. There's a general household energy action guide from Sustainability Victoria, which isn't just electrification, it's a bit of everything, comfort, behaviour, all of that. It's well worth having a look at. You can also book in for personal advice with Ian or Mel at Council. They've got drop-in sessions, but you can contact them and make a personal session with them, and it's well worth it. They know lots and lots of stuff, so if you're really stuck on something, give them a call. there's great information in the yourhome.gov.au manual. It's a book that you can buy, and the library, I imagine, also has a couple of copies, but it's something you can also look up online. Just go to yourhome.gov.au, look for what you want, and you can download PDFs of every single section of the book, all free. So it's a phenomenal resource, and the information's very up to date. Sustainability Victoria also has really great resources, and the Renew magazine, which is a not-for-profit, Renew's a not-for-profit, and that panel, removable panels thing that I talked about is from the Renew magazine. Thank you for listening. There's a few more sessions coming up that are listed there. If you want to look up what's coming up or book, you can go to either, actually, I'll put these links in my follow-up email. There'll be links to the council websites that list all of the programs and allow you to book in. And I'll also send a link to a survey, which I might also copy. I'll stop sharing now, and you can ask me questions, and I'll also copy the survey in. If you wouldn't mind just spending a couple of minutes filling it in, that would be awesome. Grace was talking about this Rethink program being to support you all. And if you have an idea of something you'd like us to teach you or do, let us know, because that, for example, the DIY removable panel window thing, that's because people are keen to know how to do that. And we can do similar things in other areas. Okay, I'm just going to quickly grab this link and put it in the chat, hopefully. Oh, and I can see there's, did I copy it? Oh, whoops, I've done it twice. Hopefully that link works. It looks a bit weird to me. Is it working, Grace, or is it a bit strange?
I think you send an image file.
Maybe it is. Let me try again. Ah, that's better. How's that?
Yeah.
So yeah, if people could spend a couple of minutes on that, that would be awesome. Let me go and look at if there's any questions. Oh, Helmut, I hope you got the audio problem sorted out.
Yep, they joined on their phone later. So.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And remember, this is recorded, so you'll be able to go back and have a look, and also spread the word to anyone else who might be interested. Actually, there's no questions here. Has anyone got a question? It can be about your own situation or something you've been looking into and you're not sure whether it's a good idea or not.
Yeah, hi, Lucinda.
Yeah, hi.
You said you've got the slides. Can you send us the slides? Or?
Yes, I will. I'll send you a copy. So after this, I'll send a follow-up email, and it'll have links to where you can book for more events, how you can join the newsletter to get notified about new things we add, and it will also have a copy of the slides. So hopefully that'll answer any questions you've got.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, welcome. There is one thing that someone asked me previously about thermally improved aluminium frames, which you may have heard of. I'm trying to think if there's other words for it. They're aluminium, but they've been improved, and how they've been improved is there's aluminium on the outside and aluminium on the inside, but there's a section between them of usually plastic, which means that the heat can't transfer straight through. So they are better than straight aluminium, but they're still not as good as UPVC, which is a plastic frame, or as a timber frame. And I believe just from hearing people talk about that they're quite a bit more expensive as well, which makes sense because they're made of multiple things. Whereas if you went for a UPVC frame, it's made of one thing, and it doesn't transfer heat. So if I was buying a new window, I would go UPVC because it doesn't need painting and all that stuff. It can be any color, and it's thermally protective. Is there any other questions? Did you have any, Grace?
Actually, Helmet has been, I think he accidentally direct messaged me, but they had a question.
Oh, okay.
So they asked, with the retrofit options, can they prevent condensation?
Yes. You're right. It is an issue with the example of Clear Comfort. That's the one where you put the double-sided tape and you put the film and then shrink it. They do say to make sure there's no moisture around the window or the frame beforehand, and they also suggest not to do it unless the day is a certain degree, because you wouldn't want to add it in the middle of winter on a cold, rainy day. You would do it on a sunny day where there's not that much moisture in the air. It also depends on the house, because we've put it on a lot of windows. We've since changed it to other secondary glazing, but we did have issues with condensation just in the window above our sink, but not in any other places. But our house is sort of lifted up on stilts, so it's not the type of house that has a lot of condensation issues. But in another scenario, it might be more of a problem. If you choose something like EcoGlaze, Magnetite, they're actually removable. So technically, you shouldn't really have to remove them. But if you did end up with condensation, you could just pull them off because it's magnetic tape that sticks to each other, and then that would be okay. With something like retrofitted double glazing into timber frames, those are totally sealed, newly built units, so there would not be any problems with those. I hope that answers your question, Helmet. Oh, here's...
Yeah, they've got a couple more.
Yeah, how long do UPVC windows last? They're very long lasting. Just make sure you get one that has been made for Australian conditions. There are a few manufacturers here in Melbourne that do UPVC windows, and as long as they're made for our conditions, they should be absolutely fine. I don't know an actual, length of time, I'm afraid, but I do know people who have had them for, 20, 25 years and they're going fine. With the retrofit options, how would they work with sliding windows? That's a really good question, Helmet. And it depends on what you choose. So, for example, the Clear Comfort, we're talking about if it's a sash window or a sliding window, say it's a side sliding window, it might be that you end up having to put the Clear Comfort on the inside of one panel and the outside of another. It's technically the Clear Comfort should always be inside, but in the case of something that has to cross like that, you don't want it to scratch. So it just might mean being a bit creative with where you put it. That one would be fairly easy because the Clear Comfort is so thin, whereas if it was something like EcoGlaze, that would be harder because it's a bigger unit. Again, I think you could probably find a way around, but each window and door has its own challenges, and there may be some that it just won't work on. Hopefully that answers your questions, Helmet. And happy to answer any others if anyone has any.
Yeah, just another question, Lucinda.
Please. Yeah.
Where's a good place to have a look at different window designs, a whole range of windows?
For brand new ones?
Yeah.
What I can do is if you email me, I can send you a snip out of my report that I send people when I do an assessment that's got a list of local window companies that do new windows. It only lists people that do UPVC and timber framed windows, not aluminium framed. But I'm more than happy to send that to you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Does that
Yeah.
work for you?
Yeah.
I'll just put my email address in here.
Right.
Hopefully I've done it right. Yep, that's me. So yeah, feel free, and I'll just cut that out and send it on to you.
Great.
There's
Thanks.
quite a few. There's some really good companies. There's quite a lot that have a great reputation. There's at least one that has a really bad reputation purely because they're very pushy. There's a particular company that that they want to come and spend 2 hours with you, and they demand that both people or everyone in the household is there, and then they want you to sign on the day, all that sort of stuff. And so many people feel really pressured by that. So if I came across something like that, I would just say no, because it's a commitment of literally possibly tens of thousands of dollars. There's no way they should be pressuring you to sign something like that on the day that they do their presentation. So yeah, avoid that, but all the rest should be fine. Oh, actually, something I would recommend is going to some houses on Sustainable House Day if you haven't done that before. There's a Nillumbik trail run by Clean Energy Nillumbik, which is a fantastic local organisation, and they do it every year. I think there's about 7 or 8 houses this year, all kinds of, new or retrofitted, and they will probably have some different windows they've put in. So that may be of interest as well, to go and see what they've done. I know we've been open many years running. We're not this year, but it's just a great place to see what people have done in real life, because it's one thing talking about stuff, but it's another seeing it in use and hearing about things that may have gone wrong.
Do you know when that is?
Yeah, it's what date is it? Let me check. Sustainable House Day. Oh, do you know what?
The one 4th of May?
That sounds right. Yeah. That sounds right. If you look up Clean Energy Nillumbik, they'll have the houses open. Oh, thank you. That's fantastic. And you do need to book, because each house has a certain amount of sessions, and each session goes for, say, an hour.
Right.
So you need to book. Usually people will book, say, a series of 4, and you say, okay, I'm going to see 4 houses today, and you choose the time and the session that you want to go to. But it's just so good. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the rest of you have got some good ideas about your windows. And maybe I'll see some of you at the hands-on workshop. That would be great. I'm looking forward to that one. Just checking the time. Yeah, we're pretty much out of time. You've got my email address if anyone wanted to ask me anything else, or book in to see Ian or Matt. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for spending your hour this evening with us, and I'll look forward to hopefully meeting